Welcome into another episode of the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast here on Sports Illustrated, brought to you by the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Tom Cavanaugh. You can follow me at TCAV30 on Twitter/X. Follow our insider pages on Twitter/X and Facebook at Rams Insider on SI. And then type in your search bar Rams Sports Illustrated to get all of our coverage. It's not going to be a very pretty week kind of talking about this Eagles-Rams game from Sunday Night Football. An absolute butt whooping. Philadelphia comes into SoFi Stadium and whomps the Rams 37-20. A much closer score of 17 points than it really should have been. A late touchdown from the Rams really closed that gap. Should have been around 37-14, maybe even higher than that. Eagles had to settle for a couple of field goals in the first half. But when you look up and down, we're going to start with some initial thoughts, look at some player statistics, and then look at the team stats as well. That kind of wrapped it up. But not a good showing in pretty much every aspect of the game for Los Angeles. Could not stop the run one bit. Saquon Barkley went for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the pass game, they were okay. You knew the main guy was going to be A.J. Brown. He had triple digits in receiving yards today. So the defense, unable to really stop any of the big threats. Jalen Hurts, he had a myriad of runs as well. Pretty much could do whatever he wanted in the pocket. Had all the time in the world, considering he wasn't pressured often. There was just one sack on Hurts. It came from rookie Braden Fisk. Tip of the cap to Fisk. He now has 6 sacks to lead the team, and he leads all rookies as well. He continues to be a really bright spot for this team. So well done on his part. The offensive line reverted back to their old ways, like they did against the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago in prime time at SoFi Stadium when they gave up 4 sacks. They doubled down on that today and gave up 5 sacks on Stafford. Matthew was pressured all day. He was rushed. He threw some incredible passes to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. He really did. But it was very few and far between because of how often he was pressured. He obviously is in his 16th year, doesn't move all that well. But he went down several times and fumbled once on a strip. Kyron Williams, he fumbled twice, only one giveaway, only one turnover off those fumbles. It was actually on the opening drive when Los Angeles was going right down the field looking like they were going to put up 6 to start the game. Williams coughed it up in the red zone. The Rams, they executed okay when it came to red zone chances. Joshua Carty, their rookie kicker, he missed another field goal, this one from 47 yards. He has now missed a kick in each of his last 3 games. So that's just not boding well for the special team side of the Rams. And, when you look at Stafford, he threw for almost 250 with 2 touchdowns and 0 picks. So he did his job as a quarterback, but when you get sacked 5 times for 45 yards, that is going to bleed into your offensive production. When you really look at the game and you watch that thing from tape to tape, it was the Eagles running it between the tackles with Barkley. He was still bumping it outside when he had the plugged up middle of the holes. And then Hurts, he would do some designed runs or he'd find A.J. Brown for a 20-yard gain. So the Rams, going forward, it's going to be very tough for them to be able to climb into a playoff spot. They're going to have to win 4 out of their last 6 games to even become 9-8, and that may not even still get them in just because of some of these teams in the NFC. We'll talk about that at the very end, just kind of how their playoff hopes look. But, at 5-6 right now, 3-3 at home, that cannot happen. But this is a very good Eagles team. They won 7 in a row now. Nobody's stopping Saquon Barkley. He's having the best year of his career in a new place. So we'll get into the stats. We'll start on the Eagles side. It was Jalen Hurts who threw for $181 touchdown. Didn't really do a ton, but when you look at it, 179 passing yards, 109 of those went to A.J. Brown, and he had a touchdown. So when Hurts was throwing, he was directing it right at his veteran wide receiver, A.J. Brown, and he caught 6 passes on 7 targets. So whenever he threw him the ball, he was hauling it in. Also, Saquon Barkley, he had 47 receiving yards as well on 4 receptions. So he was utilized in the pass game. Dallas Goedert, he had 4 catches for 19 yards. That was pretty much it when it comes to the passing game. And now we got to get into this rushing attack. Saquon Barkley had a season high. 255 rushing yards on 26 carries with 2 touchdowns. He had 2 runs of over 70 yards, one to open up the third quarter and another one early in the fourth. He murdered this Rams defense from top to bottom, from the defensive line to the linebackers to the deep secondary. I mean, he was blowing past guys. He was bumping it outside, going between the tackles for big yardage. And when you look at the numbers now for Saquon, came into the game with a little over 1,100 rushing yards. He posts the 225 tonight. He now has 1,362 rushing yards through 11 games. That is a career high for him. His best total was with the Giants back in his rookie season, or I'm sorry, back in 2022 when he posted 1,312. He has already eclipsed that number, which is absolutely insane. And the fact that he's also got 10 rushing touchdowns, that meets his total from 22 as well. So he has already met his touchdown total from 2 years ago. That was his career best, and he's already surpassed in the rushing game. Saquon in a new place. He spent 6 years with the Giants, and I bet you he's pretty darn happy to be out of there, considering his team is 9-2. They're tied for the 2 seed in the NFC with the Minnesota Vikings. And that's also a big reason why the Rams are going to have a really tough time making the playoffs, is because you got 2 9-2 teams. The Lions are the best team in football at 10-1. And then you also got the Packers winning today. They destroyed the San Francisco 49ers, who look like one of the worst teams this week to play. The Packers are now 8-3, so it's going to be very tough for the Rams if they want any shot. They're going to have to pretty much win out or lose just one more game down the stretch, and they still have to play the Niners again. They play all 3 divisional teams again. They got to play the Bills. The Saints, they're doing better with their new interim head coach. And then you also got the Jets, who have struggled this year but have good talent. So checking out the team stats from today, when you look at third down efficiency, the Rams were 0 for 8. This is looking a lot like that game, and I know they scored 2 touchdowns, but it's looking a lot like the Dolphins game from a couple weeks ago, where they just could not execute. It's funny, though. The Rams were 3 of 3 on fourth down, but 0 for 8 on third. In the first half, they had 5 drives. There were 3 punts, 1 touchdown, and a fumble. So they really just continued to put up 3 and outs. It was short run gains from Kyren Williams. Stafford, he completed a good majority of his passes, but on those third downs, he just couldn't get it done. Penalties also plagued this team a little bit. 4 penalties for 38 yards. The Eagles had the same amount of penalties for just a little more yardage. But one of the glaring stats that you look at, and this is just Philadelphia Eagles football, they held the ball for 33 minutes. The Rams only held it for 26. So a vast 7-minute difference in time of possession, and Philly just did what they wanted with it. And then we talked about the sacks. Hurts went down 1 time for 12 yards. Stafford was sacked 5 times for 45. And that's really it. You look at the rushing yards, 314 for the Eagles, 92 for the Rams. Red zone attempts. Rams were 2 of 4 in the red zone. The Eagles were 2 of 5, but they didn't need to go to the red zone twice because Saquon knocked off 70-plus yard runs. In the passing game, Stafford actually outpassed Hurts, throwing for over 250. Jalen only $170 or so. So, I mean, the Rams are more of a passing team than the Eagles are, obviously, because what we saw tonight from Barkley and Hurts helping out a little bit. But they were playing the second best pass defense in the league. I know we saw Reed Blankenship go down early on in the ball game. Darius Slay came back in. He took a couple nasty hits today. He played solidly well. Quinyon Mitchell played well, the rookie out of Toledo. Cooper DeJean was in on some action. So this secondary for the Eagles, there was no slouch. Stafford did what he could, but because of guys like Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, Nolan Carter Jr., all of those guys were stellar today. You look at the defensive stats. Nakobe Dean, 8 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. He was a force to be reckoned with. CJ Gardner-Johnson had 5 tackles with a tackle for loss. Cooper DeJean, second on the team in tackles with 6. And then when you look at the sack totals, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams had a pair of sacks as well. So, I mean, they were stacking up. A lot of these guys were getting in there early and often. We talked about Blankenship. He hurt his shoulder early in the ball game on the opening drive. He did come back in the game, but he looked a little tender. On the defensive side for the Rams, they had Christian Roseboom leading the team with 12 tackles and one tackle for loss. Omar Spates, the rookie, 7 tackles, along with Jared Verse and Cam Curl. They had 7 apiece as well. Michael Hoyt, he had 6 with the TFL. And then down the line, the only other notable stats really is the rookie Fisk, who had 4 tackles, 2 of them for loss, and the sack as well, the lone sack for the Rams in the ball game. So moving on to next week, the Rams will be on the road. They're going to head south to play the New Orleans Saints. Saints will break down their team throughout the week. They're 4-7 currently. Fired their coach halfway through the season, Dennis Allen. Darren Rizzi is now their interim head coach. So it's another tough task here for the Rams, because just teams will play a little bit harder sometimes when they do have that interim head coach after a really slow start to the year. So you got a 5-6 team taking on a 4-7 Saints. These Rams got to bounce back, and when you look at their schedule down the stretch, it's New Orleans, Buffalo, 49ers, the Jets, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. You got to find 4 wins at least in that 6-game stretch to finish out the year if they want to be anywhere close to a wild card team. The division is still fairly close. You saw a win today from Seattle over Arizona to put those two at the top. They're both 6-5. And then you got the Niners and the Rams stuck at the bottom, tied for last at 5-6. This has been the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. These guys will see better days in the future, hoping to bounce back next week against the Saints, a 37-20 loss at home on primetime for the second straight week in primetime that they went down. Lost to the Dolphins 2 weeks ago on Monday night, and now to the red-hot Eagles, who have won 7 in a row. Thanks so much, everybody. We will see you again next time here on the Los Angeles Rams Pod.